Good morning, everybody. This is attorney Chris Marr, and this is the most recent version of my Friday morning legal topics. It generates questions and answers from people. Today, I want to talk about something I've spoken about before, but I want to re-emphasize certain things because these are recurring issues that come up in the field of DWI and DWAI drug cases. Specifically today, I want to talk about prescription medication. People think that if they're taking prescription medication, they think that even if there's some impairment, that they're safe because it's prescribed by a doctor. That's not necessarily so, because I find very often that in these DWAI drug cases that people are taking more than one medication. They may be taking medication from different doctors who may not know that they're being prescribed, the patient's being prescribed medication by someone else. So very often what happens is the person is driving and they are having some inability, or at least according to law enforcement, inability to operate their motor vehicle in a reasonable and prudent fashion. And they end up in the clutches of a police officer or a state trooper or a sheriff's deputy somewhere in the New York metropolitan area where my practice is located. Sometimes the person has been drinking, but for purposes of today, I'm concentrating on medication, prescription medication, because people say to me all the time, I was taking medication that my doctor had prescribed. I was taking it as the doctor had prescribed it. The bottom line is that when law enforcement pulls you over on the side of the road or finds you on the side of the road because you've had an accident, which are the typical classic scenarios, the first questions from law enforcement, oftentimes late at night, when you seem to be far away from any friendly advice like myself, is that the officer eventually will get to the question of, will you submit to a chemical test? People say to me, well, I blew in the machine on the side of the road. That's not the chemical test that really is dispositive. That's a screening device that very often law enforcement uses, and they will then take the next step in taking you back after you've been placed under arrest, taking you back to their barracks or their law enforcement offices, and they will have you prepare to blow into the machine at the station, or if they determine that drugs are involved, then they will have you be presented with the option of submitting to a blood test. Very often, the person doesn't know what to do, and the person says, well, I remember I was at this party, or I was talking to somebody who told me once, don't ever take the test, don't ever take the test. Regardless of what happens with the case that you will have in a courthouse arising out of these facts, you'll also have a case at the Department of Motor Vehicles, separate and distinct from any courthouse case that you may have. And the case at the Department of Motor Vehicles does not, it doesn't go in conformity with whatever happens to you at the courthouse. So you can have a case at the courthouse that you've disposed of, and it doesn't necessarily dispose of the case that you have at the Department of Motor Vehicles. If you choose to refuse to submit to a chemical test, whether it's your blood, breath, urine, or saliva, depending on whether the police officer or the sheriff's deputy or the trooper thinks that you've on medication, and typically around here, law enforcement wants a blood test. So if you refuse to submit to the blood test, you face a 1-year loss of your driver's license, which is a complete and total revocation of your license, and it doesn't automatically come back to you after a year. That 1-year revocation will happen regardless of whatever happens to you, or can happen regardless of whatever happens to you in a courthouse, at any subsequent town, village, or city court appearances, or county court appearances for that matter, if it's a felony. You have to make decisions, and one of the decisions I always say is keep somebody like myself on speed dial, because if somebody calls me up in the middle of the night and they find themselves in this predicament, police and law enforcement will generally always allow you to make a call to someone such as myself, but you just got to hope that it's somebody who's situated to pick up the phone in the middle of the night and help you, walk you through the decision of whether to take the test or not, whether it's a blood test, a urine test, saliva test, or a breath test. Those determinations center around whether there was an accident. If there's an accident and somebody's hurt, you don't admit to anything, and you don't agree to take any tests, because what you have facing you in the courthouse is severe. Depending on what county you're in, that factors into the determination about whether to take the test or not, because in some counties, the district attorneys in the county may have a policy where they punish people separate and distinct from any punishment from motor vehicle or any punishment from a court judge. They punish people for exercising their right to refuse to take the test. If you want to talk to me further about this, don't hesitate to call my cell number at 914-400-8379. Keep somebody such as myself on speed dial. Medicate yourself, and just because you're on prescription medication doesn't mean that you're safe to drive.
Be careful. Have a good weekend.
And be careful and have a very good weekend.